Is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the NHL Stochastic Strategy Show, sponsored by Bet365. Feels good to say that. It feels like our last show was last week, but also feels like it was 3 years ago. It's good to be back. A lot of stuff happened in the offseason. Cliffy, how was your offseason?
Good offseason. It always feels short. I think COVID might have kind of just messed with our schedules a little bit because, you go 4 or 5 months at a time without hockey. That's certainly not the case now. Basically, a 3 months turnaround between free agency and the start of the season. So it's a good offseason. Didn't really, I got to some friends came in from out of town, got to spend time with them and at a wedding and a bachelor party and those types of things. So pretty good off season, but man, I'm just ready to get back into the NHL. Like, I don't know, just from my opinion, like the NHL product has just gotten so much better over the last 5 years where even some of the bad games are still entertaining to watch. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not San Jose Sharks, but the Arizona Coyotes are fun to watch. The Seattle made the playoffs last year. Florida made that deep cup run. Nashville has turning the keys over to the younger kids. We'll talk about that team later on the slate. So there's just a lot of interesting things going around most of the teams. Even some of the middle of the road teams, like, we just saw Winnipeg yesterday. It looked like all offseason they were going to trade Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, and all of a sudden they're signing Twins 7-year, $8.5 million per season deals. So I know there's not a lot of significant player movement. Like, you don't get blockbuster trades like you do in the NBA. But there's still a lot of interesting storylines all across the NHL. And it certainly didn't feel that way 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm pretty thankful for that. And I think that's part of why I'm so excited for the NHL season to start.
Yeah, I mean, I like the NHL product. I don't have a problem watching bad teams. As you know, we stay up late and just watch the Canucks and just be in pain. But you know what is bad? Thursday night football. The product they put out on the field is just absolute shit. But starting off the show right here, we got a $10 super chat from our pal Saul Goodman. Says, shout out litigious Steve Buzzard. Steve, why are you litigious?
That's a good word, by the way.
Haas doesn't know what that means, but we'll explain it to him after the show.
Haas taking strays 5 minutes into the season. Poor guy.
Well, listen, let me take a minute to talk about our pal Haas. Middle of July, I'm getting added in the hockey channel from Haas about the Grand Slam at Denny's at 3 a.m. It's like, Haas, come on. Let me give you my cell. You need help, you can just talk to me. Let's talk. We also have a $15 super chat from Doug Weissman. Nothing attached to it. Thank you for the super chat. I see there is a lot of you guys in here, lots of familiar faces, lots of new ones. Welcome. Before we start talking about some of the off-season stuff, some of the favorite bets we have this season, or even some of the DFS slate, make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our show goes live. If YouTube isn't for you, which is kind of weird because I'm talking to you on YouTube, you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Leave us a 5-star review there. Also, since tonight is opening night, we don't expect any of you to go premium, but we have a deal for you guys. If you look at the links in the description, just for you guys, there is 10% off the weekly and the monthly packages in the description. You have to go through the link in the description. That will get you 10% off either of our premium offerings. That gets you the top stacks, the projections. There's going to be a lineup page soon, and it gets you into the Discord where there is a whole bunch of shenanigans and a lot of sharp minds. So click that link in the description if you're thinking about going premium. This is for the listeners only. Just click on that. You'll see it says 10% off weekly or monthly. And we have another super chat here from Chris Orstel, $20. Thank you very much. Says, thanks, guys. Welcome back. Side note, FanDuel needs to step up their game with the contest. Single entries are horrible. That is an evergreen tweet or evergreen chat. They don't really, since they sold to that, I believe it's a European sports book, they definitely focus more on the sports book aspect of it. They'll occasionally run those bigger contests like once a month, but generally it's tough to play on FanDuel if you're a single entry player. I know we also have Owner's Box. They will be also offering DFS contests. I'm not sure what they look like, but their NFL stuff has been pretty good. I see lots of people in chat here, but let's talk a little bit about some off-season stuff, maybe a little bit about DFS strategy, some of your favorite bets in the season. Maybe we should just give a little refresher on your strategies, some short. See, first day, we're already tripping over ourselves. Some short slate strategy. But first, another super chat. You guys are the best from Grade A Flicks 6969, a true legend. The best DFS duo is back and in full effect. Missed you guys and glad y'all are back. Let's have another fun DFS hockey season. Josh, hope little man is doing well. Cliffy the Gray, looking good on you, brother. Yeah, we're both in our late 30s now. We're the same age. The little man is doing good. I have two little mans now. I have a 2.5-month-old son. Came during the off season. Good planning on my part. Didn't do any planning. Another thing, just real quick, I upgraded my internet because finally there's upgrades available in my area. No longer will it be one cloud. My internet will no longer be orange-red. So we are hopefully good with the internet here. But thank you very much, Grade A Flicks. We truly appreciate you. Talk to you a little bit over the off season. Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the super chats. It's definitely a great way to start the season. To see the love from the people in the chat, people on Twitter, people in Discord. We enjoy doing this. That's why we come back here season after season. You and I come back and do this year after year. We really enjoy being here, and a lot of it is the community. It's just fun to talk hockey with a lot of different people that we normally don't get to talk hockey with. So thanks for the super chats. We really do appreciate it. Let's talk some hockey.
Yeah, let's do the hockey. So one thing we talked about, we did a few off-season podcasts last year about some strategy, which we can link onto Twitter, where we talked about how we build and stuff. But tonight's a short slate. It's 3 games. Something you talk about from time to time is sometimes if the line is elite, you'll leave a player off because how often does a full line go off? So on a slate like tonight, maybe you're looking to leave someone off a non-elite line and plug in a cheaper guy who has a high shot floor per se. And so I'm expecting the way I'm building, I don't know how fully correlated I'm going to be tonight, but are you looking at some high floor one-offs?
Yeah, I'm just off the top. You and I did a how to play NHL DFS video before the season last year. I'm going to drop it in the YouTube chat. If anybody wants to go check it out, it's only like 25 or 30 minutes or something. And it talks a lot about stacking and strategy and things like that. Yeah, when I look for one-offs, they're almost always the high shot volume guys, right? But it's not necessarily guys that play a ton of minutes either, because to me, if you're going to one-off somebody, like let's say, tonight you decide to leave like Jake Gensel off the Pittsburgh stack, for whatever reason. And then you go in and you add Philip Forsberg. Like it feels like you're just kind of switching out one similar player for another, you know what I mean? At that point, I'd rather just keep the stack. But you and I do a lot of like 3-3 stacking, like three players from the same line from one team and 3 from another. 3-2-1, which is like three players and then 2 line mates and then one off or something like that. One thing I don't two reasons. Well, one big reason we do that is because it gives you a better chance of getting the highest scoring player on the slate in that stack, right? So if you stack the Tampa Bay top line tonight, Point, Kucherov, and Stamkos, and Kucherov has 3 goals and 2 assists. If you for whatever reason left him off, then you're totally boned. You're not going to win anything. The reason you stack the full line is if one of those guys goes off, you're going to have them in the stack where, if you only do a 2-man stack, you do run the risk of leaving the highest scoring player off the stack. And that does happen. But I also I don't want people to get too married to just one way of stacking or one way of playing, right? Especially with the bonuses on DraftKings where players, a third liner can have 5 shots and an assist or something like that and end up, one of the optimal players from the team, even though they shouldn't be in any proper stack, right? So, 2-2-2 stacks, or like a 3 or like 3-2-1, like we talked about, or like 2-2 and a couple one-offs, especially on these shorter slates where, as you mentioned, full lines don't typically correlate a ton on goals. There are 2 other players on the ice usually when those goals are scored, and they do figure in quite a bit. Sometimes there's only 1 assist. Sometimes it's an unassisted goal, things like that. So while we do a lot of 3-3 stacking or 4-3 stacking or whatever, I don't want people to get too married to just one specific way of stacking, especially on a short slate where you might not have one line go completely nuclear, right? Like, yes, Tampa or Pittsburgh or whomever might have a huge night tonight. But you might just have 3 or 4 mediocre nights. And if you have 3 or 4 mediocre nights, you're going to have some pretty bad players in those line combinations that you may not want there. So, 2-2-2 stacking, or, the 3-2-1 we were talking about. So I don't want people to get too married to the idea of stacking, but it is a good idea to still do it to some degree. You don't have to correlate every single player in your lineup, but the big reason to do it is just to make sure that you do get in that high scoring player on the slate. So on a short slate like this, I'm less married to the idea of you have to play a 3-3 stack and that's the only way to do it. I do recommend it, for people that might just be getting started in NHL DFS before, you get kind of acclimated to, how many minutes players are going to play, what true values are compared to their DraftKings or FanDuel prices and things like that. But that'd be my big thing, in addition to the video that we dropped in chat, is just don't get too tied down to one specific stacking method or, one specific stacking approach, especially where you only have like 6 teams playing tonight. There are only so many options and you may not get a big performance otherwise. One final thing I'll say is I was doing research in the offseason for season-long fantasy hockey, and we talked about the bonuses on DraftKings. The shot, block, and save bonuses are all very important on DraftKings. They're not something to overlook. Guys that block more shots will have more block bonuses. Guys that shoot more will have more shot bonuses, et cetera, et cetera. The big note that I noticed in the offseason was there's a huge jump in shot blocking last year in the NHL. It was something like a 9% rise in shot blocks in one season, which is, you just don't see that in peripherals, like for your shots or your hits or whatever. Like, it might be plus 1.7% and then minus 0.8%. And then, things like that. Nearly a 9% jump is massive. And I'm wondering if that's not going to make more defensemen viable and also bring up the value of some forwards, because a lot of it was forwards blocking more shots. Like, I think Elias Pettersson had like 90 shot blocks last year, right? Like, and those little things matter in DFS. It's because anybody will tell you there are a lot of second and third place finishes where one extra shot on goal or one extra block or something like that would have pushed you into first place. And just knowing that, shot blocking for specific players is going to become even more important. It's something to keep in mind if you're playing on DraftKings.
Yeah, and those arbitrary bonuses, you bring up a really good point when it comes to correlation, right? So you have the 3-3 stack, and in the old scoring, it was almost automatic. You'd bring a 4th guy, a defenseman, from one of your stacks. But I kind of got away from that a bunch last year. I'm not correlating my D-men as much. Like, obviously, if you can get up to the power play quarterback with your stack, you can. But like, if you're playing a second line, you don't have to put in a second pair of defensemen from that team. I'm looking for cheaper shot blocking guys who can get me that arbitrary bonus. 3 shot blocks, and the bonus is 6.9 DraftKings points. And if you're getting someone like 2,800, like someone someone I'm sure we'll talk about at the end of the show, Darren Radish from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's under 3K tonight. Is it Darren or is it the other Radish?
No, it's Darren. Taylor's on Chicago.
Yeah. Look at me remembering things.
Hey, you're on the ball, buddy.
Look at that. But yeah, I've kind of gone away from just forcing correlation with my stack on the D line just because of these arbitrary bonuses. So, I think, the biggest thing is I don't look to force correlation, but if it happens to come, I don't resist it. I think that is some of the better DFS advice I got when I was a young pup. Now I'm just an old dog and I'm still trying to learn some new tricks. But let's move on here. Before we move on to the slate, we have 3 more super chats. You guys are the best. $20 from KJ. Can't wait to ship it with John Gaudreau this year. Big Turk getting dragged. He's not even here to defend himself. We love to see it. M. Haas, our boy, instead of getting a membership for $19.99, he's dropping ridiculous super chats. $19.99 from Haas. Thank you very much. Tonight, do you anticipate that Pitt 1 is going to stop, drop, shut him down, open up shop against Chicago? I'm in that demographic. I know who DMX is. Thank you very much. Some of you younger fellows may not, but I am not sure. I like Pitt 1 tonight. We'll get to that game, obviously. I kind of like Pittsburgh 2 a little bit better, but we'll get there when we get there. And then we have a $4.20 super chat from Nate B. We back, baby. Yes, we are. Here we are. And that kind of goes well with Bobby Boom saying, I've been hitting the HIIT and intermittent fasting diet. I've been hitting the Bobby Boom diet, cocaine and hookers. That's how I lost all that weight. No, but that's how Bobby Boom stays very fit in his Tesla.
I just want to jump in on Haas's super chat here real quick. He's talking about Pittsburgh, basically laying the wood to Chicago here tonight. We'll get to that game. I'd like to remind everyone that Chicago went into Pittsburgh at the very end of the last regular season with a team that was barely AHL quality. This was after they traded anybody that was any good. And they beat Pittsburgh 5-2 in Pittsburgh to knock the Penguins out of the playoffs. And that's just the last point I want to make before we jump into the slate is don't get too married to the idea that a favorite team is just going to land base the other one. The NHL season is a long, long season. There are going to be over 1,300 regular season games played this year. You're going to see some weird stuff. You're going to see San Jose go into Tampa Bay or Toronto or Colorado and win a game. You're going to see the Chicago Blackhawks at some point this year go on the road and beat a team 7-1. There's going to be a lot of weird things. And just because, one of our buddies from Twitter says, just because it's supposed to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm paraphrasing him here. The NHL hockey is a very random sport. Over the long haul, obviously the favorite teams will win more, the better teams will win out, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're looking at just one night of games with a handful of teams, very weird things can happen. And I think that's where our top stacks tool that we'll talk about later can really help out some people.
For sure. Buddha is the man. I forgot who said it. It was someone in our Team Goalie Tilt chat. Wookie. He said, always in DFS, play the minus 300 favorites, but always bet against them.
There you go. That's I like that hedging maneuver.
Yeah. So let's get into this slate, shall we? First game of the night. First game of the season at 5:30 p.m. Eastern because there was a concert scheduled in that arena that got canceled. And the NHL was like, you know what? We'll just leave it. Nashville Predators with a 2.9 total. Heading into Tampa Bay, the Lightning have a 3.5 total. Big news here for the Lightning. Andrei Vasilevsky had back surgery. He will be out for a while. Had a microdiscectomy. I've had one of those. He's not going to be back until around December. For back surgeries go, in terms of back surgery, that is the least invasive back surgery you can get, but he's still going to be out a while. That leaves Jonas Johansson as the Tampa Bay Lightning's number one goalie. That seems like it's going to be an issue. There were concerns with Vasilevsky high blocker side the past few seasons, but Jonas Johansson is a massive step down. And if you follow the Buffalo beat writers at all, he apparently is the worst goalie in the history of the NHL. That being said, new coach in Nashville, Andrew Brunette. I don't really know the direction that this franchise is going in. They kind of sold. But then they also signed Ryan O'Reilly to a 4-year contract. Their lines are a mess. There is one line in Nashville that I kind of like. Will they get played enough to play them tonight? What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, like this is one of those games, obviously, where we think Tampa Bay should win. I think Nashville might be one of those teams that's
disconnected.
What? Oh no, you're still here with us.
Oh no, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I think Nashville is one of those teams that, you know, I really do like that. We'll talk about that Novak line here in a second. I really do like that line. You know, Ryan O'Reilly, I don't think he's the player that he was 3 or 4 years ago anymore, but he's a pretty good playmaker still at this stage of his career. And that's exactly something that Philip Forsberg needs. If you look at our top stacks tool, I'm just going to bring it up very quickly here. I'm going to make sure I bring up the sorry. I'm going to make sure I bring up the right one. Never mind. I forgot to share my screen. The top stacks, it still feels like preseason to me. The top stacks tool has Tampa 1 as the most leveraged, underleveraged line of the night. Kucherov, Point, Stamkos. And it's funny. I went and looked back at how Tampa started the season last year, and they started the season the same way. Kucherov, Point, Stamkos. And I think they won their first game of the season. It was against the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
And then they went to Brandon Hagel on the top line, and Hagel basically played the rest of the entire season there. So we've also seen it in preseason and towards the end of last year on the blue line. Victor Hedman and Mikhail Sergachev were basically switching on and off on the top power play unit last year. Sergachev ended up playing more minutes during the playoffs. You know, Hedman was probably injured. That's why preseason has been the same thing. Hedman and Sergachev have been switching their power play roles quite a bit through the preseason. So, and if you look at the bottom six, like the bottom six has been basically jumbled around all preseason long too. Like it just feels like a team that's still trying to find the right combinations. And it makes me a little bit concerned about Tampa 1 staying together all 60 minutes, especially, you know, Johansson lets in a couple softies, you know, in the first 10 minutes of the first period or something like that. Even just one of them, you might see the blender come out for Tampa. So it kind of worries me that Tampa might, you know, shift around their lines a little bit. But, you know, when that top line's together, you know, whether it was last year or prior season, Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, just absolutely deadly. 3.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 last year, 3.8 actual goals scored. Those are just, you know, really, really good numbers. I was also looking at the game Stamkos played on the top line last year. He tends to play more minutes when he starts on the top line versus when he starts on the second line with Anthony Cirelli. It's not always for sure. Like he does have some Cirelli games where he's playing 21, 22 minutes, especially earlier in the season. So I think even if Stamkos gets moved off that line, you can probably still be pretty certain he's going to play a lot of minutes here tonight. Of course, if they get up by a lot of goals, maybe he won't. But then at that point, they're up by a lot of goals. So hopefully he figures in on them. So yeah, I really do like Tampa 1 here tonight. The way that they use their lines, though, they're not a line that typically goes out against the other team's top comp. So he's not going to go out against Ryan O'Reilly. And like Ryan O'Reilly has taken a step back defensively from his heyday of like 2019, 2020 or whatever. But he's still good defensively. And like Philip Forsberg's not terrible defensively. Like, you know, Nashville's top line should be decent in their own end. I just think once you get into those second and third lines from the Predators, like once you get to that, you know, Cody Glass, Kiefer Sherwood, or like even, you know, I like the Novak Evangelista line, but, you know, I don't expect them to be very good defensively. You know, Roman Josi, Tyson Barrie look to be a defense pair that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I just think, it's going to lead to some miscues in their own end as well. So I think it's a pretty good matchup for Tampa 1. On top of that is Nashville took a lot of penalties last year. They took the 7th most penalties per game of any team in the league. Now, it would only work out to 0.2. I think it was 0.2 above the league average, which, over the course of the season might be an extra 18, 20 penalties. But, that's still a lot. It's 5-6 power play goals. It could work out to be a lot over the course of the season, especially when we're talking DFS. So, yeah, I really do like Tampa 1. They're prohibitively expensive. And that's the one thing that worries me is that if you play Tampa 1, you're kind of almost shoehorned into other specific line combos if you're stacking, right? Like at that point, then you're looking at the second and third lines from Seattle. Then you're looking at, second and third lines from Chicago. Like it feels like there might be a chance of duplication. So that's the one thing that kind of worries me with Tampa. But, there are a lot of ways you can get different with them. Nick Paul, for whatever reason, looks like he's going to, but like, it looks like he's supposed to start on the top power play unit, but that's another guy where I can't imagine them leaving him there for any real length of time. Like he's not a top power play guy. Like people might have said that about Brandon Hagel. Brandon Hagel had some decent playmaking metrics, even on a really bad Chicago team a couple years ago. And I think that's why he's meshed well with Tampa. So I do like Tampa 1. I think I would just find a way to get a little bit different with him. Add in Sergachev or Hedman on the blue line. Add in Nick Paul. Do something like that, because I think on a short slate where there are only so many secondary stacks that you can use, you do run the risk, especially in those 5,000, 7,000 man entry tournaments that DraftKings has. You do run the risk of duplicating. So I do like Tampa 1. Tampa 2, like I'm not super high on. Like Tyler Mott, like. This guy wasn't good enough to last on the Ottawa Senators, and that's a non-playoff team. You know what I mean? Like
the Rangers have traded for Tyler Mott like 4 straight years and put him on the 4th line.
Right? Like he's another guy. Like I don't like. Is he going to last past the first period on that line? Right? And then is Brandon Hagel going to jump up to the top power play unit? Now all your correlations are thrown out of whack. So I'm not super high on Tampa 2. Tampa 3 is where things kind of get interesting for me, because ostensibly Nick Paul is going to be on the top power play unit. Michael Eyssimont is a guy that really kind of opened my eyes last year. His problem is that he's not a good finisher. Like he had low shooting percentages in the AHL, low shooting percentages in the NHL. He needs a playmaker beside him, and Connor Sheary and Nick Paul just aren't those guys. So while I do like that line kind of in the real life, I don't know if I really like it in DFS. I'd almost say the Tampa 4th line is more interesting to me than the Tampa 3rd line. Like if it wasn't for Nick Paul getting top power play slotting, I'd say avoid Tampa 3 completely and go to Tampa 4. I know recommending a 4th line is kind of shaky. It is only a 3-game slate though. I feels kind of chalky to say, but I think I just like Tampa 1 more than anything. On the Nashville side, it is that Novak, Evangelista, Tomasino line that I really like a lot. They're technically Nashville 3, but to me, they look like they're going to be their second line. Their shot share, expected goal share numbers, et cetera, last year weren't great. But a lot of that was with Kiefer Sherwood on the line, and Kiefer Sherwood's just like a journeyman NHLer at this point. Like he might be fine defensively, but that's basically about it. They were great in a small sample size without him. I've written a lot about Tommy Novak in the offseason. Like his playmaking numbers were elite like not super elite, like a Mitch Marner elite. There's our first Mitch Marner sighting of the season. Whoa. But basically right in the next tier down. And he had a lot of assists in the AHL over the last 3 years as well. It was like 58 per 82 games or something like that. He's a really, really good playmaker. Evangelista, I think, makes a nice dual threat guy. Those two guys are both on the top power play unit. Tampa struggled with their PK at times last year. Might have just been Hedman being injured, but they did struggle on the PK at times. Yossi's back, which obviously should help that Nashville power play that looks so bad, especially down the stretch last year. So you get those two guys on the top power play. Tomasino's fine to add in with them. It looks like they're not getting a ton of ownership. We have them between 2 and 3% over on DraftKings, and that's because you can't fit them with Tampa 1. Not really. Like, they're almost 14K. They're getting a little expensive. But two guys on the top power play unit. Nashville spreads out the ice time, so there are going to be a lot of games where Tommy Novak plays like 16 minutes and Ryan O'Reilly plays like 18. You know what I mean? Like, there may not be a ton separating them. So I think I like Nashville 3, factoring in cost and everything, the best out of any line in this game. But, I really do like Tampa 1 and the way that they're stacking up against Nashville. It's just the concern is UC Saros in net. Like, there's a lot of games where Nashville, with almost any other goalie in the league, would have gotten blown out of the water last year, and UC Saros just saved them. So if he plays like that again, doesn't really matter who you stack from Tampa. You're going to have a bad night. But, I really like that Nashville Evangelista line.
Yeah. So there's a couple things with Tampa here. One, Nashville, like you said, takes a lot of penalties. Two, their penalty kill struggled last year. And then they traded their best PK defenseman, Matthias Ekholm, out of there. Now, will Ryan O'Reilly help on the penalty kill? Probably, but he's not the defensive player he was a few years ago. So, again, it's the question, do you want to stack against UC Saros? And on a 3-game slate, I think if you're making multiple lineups, I think you can play UC Saros and you can have Tampa Bay stacks here. I'm in agreement with you. I do really like Tampa 1. They're very expensive. They're over 23K on DraftKings, which is the issue. You run into a build issue there. And I always feel bad leaving someone off an elite line like that, a fully correlated elite line, because if you leave Stamkos off, he's going to have a hat trick. If you leave Kucherov off, he's going to go off. Braden Point had 50 plus goals last year. So, like, if you're going to play Tampa 1, I think you play Tampa 1 fully, or you add in Nick Paul and hope to get a little bit lucky. On the Nashville side, I agree. I do like that third line. Now, we're talking about not leaving players off, but I think Nashville top line, Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, you can leave Juuso Parssinen off and try to go find your high shooting floor guy one-off there. Now, Ryan O'Reilly, his defensive metrics have taken a step down, but his offensive numbers were really good last year, even with the Blues. The problem was on the Blues, there was no one to finish. He was a very good passer.
They didn't play him with anybody either. Like, he I forget who it was, but he spent like 50 games next to a guy that they put on waivers in March or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Buchnevich and Thomas would play a lot together, Kyrou and Thomas, whatever, but O'Reilly didn't really get to play a lot with those guys. That's why his assist numbers created last year, and he looked a lot better playing for Toronto.
Yeah, and he actually had line mates in Toronto. He actually looked good in the play. Like, he was arguably one of their better offensive players for the Leafs as long as they lasted in the playoffs. Congrats, Leafs fans, for getting out of the first round since the first time since the Lincoln administration. But we'll get to them tomorrow. Another thing, so, like, I would imagine the Cirelli line goes out against top comp. That's generally what they've been doing. The thing is, like, Cirelli did not have a good defensive season last year.
So I'm wondering if it was just that because he returned late from injury, right? Like, he returned after the season started. So I'm thinking maybe that's it. Because there's just too much of a good track record behind him to think, 50 games after returning from injuries is what he's going to be now. I think I'd bank on him kind of returning to form a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he was ever fully healthy. But that being said, maybe it still takes him a little while to get going. There's Jonas Johansson in net. The Lightning don't have a very good penalty kill. So I think 2 men of Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg is a nice stack. But I do agree, Nashville 3, also my favorite there. Jake circled that line in like June. He's been so excited for this slate. Lock him in with Yossi. He's super happy. But yeah, I agree. There is a lot to like on this slate or in this game. But before we get to the next game, we are sponsored by Bet365, and all you got to do to get $150 in bonus bets is sign up, make a deposit, and bet $5. Bet365 still only available in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. That being said, they are looking to get into more. They've been trying to get into Pennsylvania for like a year now. I don't know why they haven't launched yet, but they should be launching in new states. So that is a good deal for you. Sign up, bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets. And you have to be 21 plus. Actually, you only have to be 18 in Kentucky. Kentucky just kind of does what they do. And if you or anyone else has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. So let's get into the second game of our slate. They're going with some two big market teams here on opening night. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.6 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 3.8 total. Unfortunately, Connor Bedard landed in Chicago. I was hoping he'd go elsewhere, but he is in Chicago. He has Taylor Hall and Ryan Donato on his wings. That's going to be a fun line offensively. It's going to be pond hockey. Bedard looks and moves like Connor McDavid does. They're pricing him up on DraftKings tonight. I don't even remember. I remember Austin Matthews in his first game where he scored 4 goals. I think he was under 6K. Bedard, they're not messing around. He's 7,500. They're going into Pittsburgh. I don't mind stacking Chicago here. I just am not a huge believer in this blue line and the depth for Pittsburgh. Now, Karlsson came over to Pittsburgh, but I just don't think he's going to have the impact he did with the Sharks. He played 30 minutes a night, essentially, with the Sharks. He wasn't very good defensively. He's going to be playing 20, 22 minutes now. I just don't think he's going to have the impact on both ends that Penguins fans are expecting. Good news for the Penguins, Jake Gensel is back tonight after an ankle injury. I think he had ankle surgery not too long ago. Glad to see him back. That being said, Pittsburgh is running Rust, Crosby, Gensel, second line of Riley Smith, Malkin, and Ricard Raquel. I like Pittsburgh one here, but Brian Rust has so much better numbers with Evgeny Malkin. That being said, Evgeny Malkin has very good numbers with Ricard Raquel, so I'm kind of leaning towards Pittsburgh too here. You get 2 guys on the top power play on either of those lines, but Pitt 2 is not nearly as highly owned as Pitt 1 here tonight.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on Pitt 2. I do want to talk about the top line because they do have a pretty big sample together, nearly 1,000 minutes. They're good, but they're not great. Like 3 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 is a good mark. From a top line with Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel on it, you kind of want more. Like we just talked about that Tampa top line sitting at 3.8 last year, right? So like over 25%, like 30% higher. You definitely want a higher mark than 3.0. And that's where I'm wondering where Karlsson's impact is going to come in, because Karlsson can't play the way he did with San Jose last year, right? Like it was basically like watching the Sharks last year was like watching like that under 7 team that you might have played on 30 years ago, where you had that one really good kid and the strategy was get the puck to that one guy and just let him skate. Like that was basically San Jose's offense last year. It was just let Karlsson do what he can do. He can't really do that in Pittsburgh because there are so many other talented players that are going to be on the ice with him. Like you can't just let Karlsson just skate around and have Sidney Crosby stand at a faceoff dot. Like that's just not going to work. But if his playmaking can be what it was, earlier in the Sharks days when the team was better, certainly back in his Ottawa time, like his playmaking was still really good last year. It was just the guys receiving the passes weren't. So I think that's where his impact can help, is if he can help them create better scoring chances at 5-on-5 or at even strength or whatever. I think that's where Karlsson's impact will be felt the most. Power play as well. But it's one of those things. It's like, do you want to, kind of tin cup it and keep playing Pittsburgh 1 and hope that those numbers climb with Karlsson? Or do you want to wait to see it before it happens? And it might not happen at all. And then, you're just kind of wasting your money throwing it at Pittsburgh 1 night after night. If it does happen, you'll get in early on the ground floor before other people do. And, like you said, they are the second best leverage line of the night, but they are going to carry a lot of ownership. Our Pittsburgh 1 ownership projection by Top Stacks, over 25% on DraftKings. On FanDuel, they're leading the way, over 40% because They're not that expensive. So there's going to be a lot of ownership on them. But with that Pittsburgh setup, there are a lot of different things you can do with them, right? Russ not being on the power play means you can add Rickard Rakell, means you can add Evgeny Malkin and go double center, means you can add Erik Karlsson on the blue line. There are a lot of different things you can do with the Pittsburgh stack. We can throw out our first Josh stack of the season. Josh stacking is on DraftKings when you just have 6 skaters from the same team. You can do basically the entire Pittsburgh top power play unit and then add Riley Smith or add Rust or add, a second cheap defenseman or something like that. But Pittsburgh not having great offensive numbers over a huge sample worries me. I'm wondering if Karlsson is going to be enough of a difference maker to kind of juice those numbers up a little bit. I think he can be. It's just a matter of them meshing well enough together. But it is one of those situations where if I'm playing a ton of lineups, I might want to come in a little overweight on them. Just because if Karlsson is a difference maker, if he can help them generate better quality shots and better quality looks at even strength, that's going to be the key to unlocking this Pittsburgh offense pretty much as a whole. And if Karlsson can do that, I want to be playing it. I want to be playing the Penguins before the proof and the evidence comes out that he is doing that. You know what I mean? So I think in a nutshell, I'd rather play Pittsburgh 1 than Tampa 1 here tonight, factoring in cost and all that, even with the higher ownership. But I think I'm kind of with you. I do like Pittsburgh 2 here. I think adding Riley Smith is kind of an underrated add for Pittsburgh because he's a dual threat guy. He's not just a playmaker. He's not just a goal scorer. He can kind of do it both. And that's something that I think that line kind of needs because the other two guys are kind of similar, right? Like especially at this stage of his career, I don't think Malkin is a, elite playmaker or an elite goal scorer, but he's pretty good at both of them. And I think Rakell's kind of the same. And I think having Smith just adds another dual threat dimension to that line. You're going to get two of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. I talked about Malkin in the picks article, free to read up at stochastic.com. Just go check out our NHL section. One thing I mentioned was the impact of Rickard Rakell on Malkin. When he had Rakell beside him, the team shot 8.6%. And when he didn't have Rakell, the team shot 7.5%. You'd like to see it higher. You'd like to see it between 9 and 10%. But that jump would be significant over the course of a full season. And Rakell had a similar impact on their power play as well. So I do kind of like Pittsburgh too a little bit better. They're going to be going out quite a bit against the Bedard line if they keep doing the line matching that they did last year. And I do want to shout out line matching. I saw our buddy Adam Daly, Quick Party, talking about Nick Paul's power play prowess from Ottawa in the chat. I'm going to have to go look that up because that feels like something that you're just kind of making up. But he does run line matching on Twitter. You and I both subscribe to it. It's not something that's through Stochastic at all. It's just something he does on the side. But it's something that we do use. He does have them going out against the Bedard line. I think that's a good matchup for Bedard on the other side. But I really do like Pittsburgh too. Pittsburgh 3 is kind of interesting because with Gensel back, I assume Drew O'Connor goes to the third line. Drew O'Connor is a guy that typically puts up very high shot rates, but like Esamont for Tampa, has a trouble converting them into goals. Not sure Lars Eller's the guy to do that, but I do think O'Connor can actually at least generate some shots, and I think he's still min-priced on DraftKings. So don't mind Pittsburgh 3 if you need to dumpster dive big time. But I think I'm with you. It is Pittsburgh 2 that I like here. The Chicago side is interesting because people seem to be all over the place on Connor Bedard. I do a lot of season-long fantasy hockey stuff, and I was kind of gauging his average draft position, and where he was going in a lot of drafts was right around the top 30 pick. And to be a top 30 player at center in season-long fantasy hockey, that means people are expecting 40 plus goals, 80 plus points. That's high. Even Austin Matthews only had I think it was 68 or 69 points in his rookie season, 40 goal year, 3 shots per game, but still I don't think he cracked 70 points. And, when Matthews came into the league, it was Mitch Marner's rookie season. It was Nylander's rookie season. It was Hyman's rookie season. Like, there's a lot of good players coming in at the same time. Bedard's getting that Korchinski kid on the blue line. He's getting a little bit of help from Taylor Hall. That's about it. Bedard's going to have to do a lot of it himself. Now, I think he can. I don't he's not coming in with like a ton of ownership, just under 20% on DraftKings. I think that's fine for such a short slate. I imagine there are going to be people one-offing him for I think pretty good reason, because he's going to be the shooter on that line. I don't imagine Ryan Donato is going to last very long there. Like, Donato's bounced around from team to team to team for, I think, pretty good reason. I can't imagine he's going to last too long on the top line. So if you want to play Chicago 1, go ahead. Looking at our top stacks, they're coming in basically right at their top 2 percentage. So right around 18, 19%. So they're fine to play. Chicago 2 is kind of interesting to me. Tyler Johnson looks like he got the boot from the power play in favor of Corey Perry. Min-price Corey Perry playing on the top power play with Hall and Bedard. I think there are worse players to play, honestly, on a 3.
How many, this is what's going to happen. If Corey Perry scores a power play goal, it's going to be from Hall, because Hall cannot finish to save his life. Hall will clean up his mess. One
thing I do want to mention about Hall is when he was in Boston, he got his ice time nuked big time compared to when he was in New Jersey. And when he wasn't playing with David Pastrnak, he was playing with the bottom 6 guys. He was playing with the Trent Fredericks, AJ Greers, Charlie Coyle guys. Like, he wasn't playing with, he played a lot with Pastrnak. And if you look at Hall's production with Pastrnak on a per minute basis, when he had Pastrnak as his right winger, he produced at the same rate as Mikko Rantanen in Colorado.
Yep.
The problem was he was playing 15 to 16 minutes a game, and he wasn't playing a lot with Pastrnak, or not often enough anyway. So if you think, Bedard's like a Pastrnak Jr., then Hall's probably going to have a good season. He just doesn't shoot a lot and doesn't finish well. He's kind of like a Chandler Stevenson almost. You know what I mean?
Jake's going to be mad about that one. But
yeah, I know. But I do kind of like Chicago too. Lucas Reichel seems like he could be like the next Robert Thomas. Like, maybe not a monster goal scorer, but a guy that can probably put up like 20 goals and 70 assists once he really hits full flight. He's not at that point yet, but I think he's kind of interesting in that sense. Taylor Radish, not a bad shooter. He's going to be on the top power play unit. Tyler Johnson had a reasonable shot rate last year. Like, I don't mind Chicago 2 as one of those filler type stacks here. Obviously, a lot of people are going to go to Chicago 1. I don't really have a problem with them because, the Pittsburgh defense looks suspect. I don't care what anyone says. Like, Erik Karlsson, as great as he is offensively, is awful defensively. Chris Letang's getting old. You're still relying on like Chad Rubeedle.
Graves is pretty good, but
Graves is fine. Pettersson took a step back last year, but I think he was playing injured, so that might have been part of it. But I think the defense is a little bit suspect, and Tristan Jarry is nothing to be scared of, really. So I don't mind that Chicago second line, especially just like a 2-man of like Reichel and Radish or something like that, just to save a little bit of cash. But it is Pittsburgh too. I do like most of this game.
Yeah, I'm a big Radish slappy. Both of them. I like both of them. They look nothing alike. I don't know how they're brothers. But just another quick point on Bedard. Like, everyone's like anointing him the what's the rookie trophy? I already forget.
The Calder,
right. McDavid didn't win the Calder his rookie year. Granted, he got hurt, but he played 52 games, I believe, and he had like 18 goals and 40 assists or something like that, which is a nice season. But like, if you think about what Connor McDavid is now, and you look back to his rookie year, like, the expectations on Bedard are just absolutely crazy. Can he win the Calder? Absolutely. Should he be the favorite? Absolutely. But like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's see the kid in action. I think having Taylor Hall will definitely help, but Ryan Donato is just a guy right now. Maybe they find someone that can fit in there with them. I don't mind that line tonight, but if you're looking to save salary, I agree. Lucas Reichel, Radish. I'm in on Pitt too. I think Pitt power play stack is fine. Pittsburgh 1 also fine. Before we get to the next game here, I see there are almost 300 of you in the chat. if you haven't smashed that like button, please smash that like button. Helps us out tremendously, goodly. Also, we have a Stochastic Hall of Fame. To be eligible, you go download the Stochastic avatar at stochastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants. There are actually some on NHL and DraftKings that you can do that. If you finish top 3 in a contest, tweet the win to @StochasticHOF account on Twitter. If you don't have Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, you can DM me or Cliffy. You can email support@stochastic.com. You can win a free month of the Stochastic package of your choosing. It is sports specific. If you want a month of the NHL package, you can choose that. Also, again, if you are still thinking about going premium for Stochastic, click the link in the description below. You get 10% off monthly and weekly packages. That is for listeners only. The link in the description will take you where you need to go with the discount. We also have a $5 super chat from Jetty DFS. Thank you very much. Missed you guys. Do you know if we can still get FC with projections and ownership preloaded, or do we have to do FC and uploads ourselves? There, you can add on FC. So if it's not in the link in the description below, you can sign up and then you can add it separately. But you definitely can. You definitely can still add Fantasy Cruncher, and the projections will be uploaded there. You can still upload your own if you have them, obviously, but Stochastics will be uploaded. Thank you for the super chat. Let's move on to the final game of the night. The Seattle Kraken with a 2.9 total heading into Vegas to face the defending Stanley Cup champs. The Vegas Golden Knights have a 3.6 total. Seattle's an interesting team. They made the playoffs. They gave Colorado a pretty good run for their money. Their penalty kill looked very good. They shot the lights out at 5-on-5 last season, so it's kind of like, I know some people are higher on Seattle than others. I worry about shooting percentage here. I think they're a decent defensive team, and they can make the playoffs. But if they don't shoot like 98%, or not 98%, but they were shooting like 18%, something ridiculous like that, if that regresses, they're going to have some trouble scoring some goals here.
Yeah. Fun fact, the 22-23 Seattle Kraken had the highest 5-on-5 shooting percentage of any team in an 82-game season since 2007. Of any team. Like, think of all the great teams. Think of that Detroit team in 2008, or the Pittsburgh teams after that, the Chicago teams of the mid-2010s, Colorado and Tampa Bay over the last 5 or 6 years. Seattle shot better than all of them 5-on-5. So I'm with you. I worry about that because shooting percentages regress. That's just what they do. Like, repeating that year after year is just not possible. And the problem with Seattle is they don't take a ton of shots, right? Like, their shot attempts last year were in the bottom half of the league. Like, not at the bottom, but like 20th or 21st on a per minute basis. So if you're not shooting a ton and all of a sudden your shooting percentages crash, you're not bringing much fantasy value, DFS value, because you're not racking up those shot bonuses, especially when with Seattle allotting the ice time that they do. Like, they spread out the ice time quite a bit. There'll be a lot of games where Matty Beniers plays 3 or 4 minutes less than Yanni Gourde. There are going to be games where Jared McCann plays 14 minutes and James Schwartz plays 19 minutes. Like, their top line is ostensibly their top line, but I'm pretty sure in the playoffs that Beniers line was, by ice time, was ran as the second line. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the problem with Seattle, is like, they're not afraid to play their top line 16 minutes and their fourth line like 11 or 12 minutes, and then everybody else is in between. That's a problem for DFS because you want the minutes. Going in a matchup against Vegas is not a good matchup. Like, Vegas was the least penalized team in the league last year, I think by quite a bit. Like, it wasn't even close to the next next to the team nearest them in terms of penalties taken. So Seattle splits their power play units as already, like a 60-40 split. They might not get 2 power plays here tonight. Like maybe they get 3. And then they run pretty even 5-on-5 lines as well. Like that's kind of the problem with Seattle is like, I do like the top line in a nutshell. I think, that McCann, Beniers, Eberle line is pretty good. There's not going to be a lot of ownership on them here tonight. Like I was looking at our top stacks tool, ownership on that Seattle top line is coming in about 3% on DraftKings, which is really, really low. On FanDuel, a little bit higher, but still only between 8 and 9%. That's not a lot of ownership when you're looking at a top line on a 3-game slate. Like I was saying a little earlier in the show, weird things happen on any given night. Like it's Aiden Hill in net. Like, yeah, I know he won the Stanley Cup. So did Antti Niemi behind the Chicago roster, right? And Antti Niemi did not have very many more good seasons after that.
Legend, Antti Niemi.
Yeah, so like I'm not a believer in Aiden Hill. I think Logan Thompson is probably the better goalie, but I mean, we're talking goalies. I don't really want to dig into it that much further. But it's a bad matchup, but I don't really hate that Seattle top line. Like, 4.7 goals for per 60 minutes last year. Obviously, they overheated quite a bit. But even if they drop their goal scoring by 25%, they're still going to be scoring 3.5, 3.6 goals per 60 minutes, which is way higher than the Pittsburgh line that we just talked about, right? So I do kind of like Seattle 1 here. I don't know if I'm playing single entry and I play Seattle 1, I don't mind it from a leverage from an ownership perspective. Just be ready to lose. You know what I mean? That's just kind of it. I am considering playing Seattle 1 here tonight, but I'm also considering shutting off that game after the first period when Vegas is up 3-0. You know what I mean? So I don't mind that line. It's mainly for ownership reasons. It's not because this is a great spot or a sneaky good spot or anything like that. I don't think it really is. The other Seattle line I would consider is that Gord, Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen line. They're coming in with a fair bit of ownership compared to their top 2 stack percentage. They're probably going to be outright higher owned than the top line, which feels crazy. But, you get Bjorkstrand on the power play. You get Tolvanen on the power play. Gord might end up on the power play as they switch things around. Gord might end up playing the most minutes of any player on that team here, or any forward on that team here
I think
tonight.
he will, because he
So I don't mind that Seattle third line as a little bit of a filler. Schwartz, Burakovsky, and Wenberg did not play to get well together when Burakovsky was healthy last year. I don't know why they're putting them back together. Seattle seems to be a smart team, so they probably know more than I do. But for me, it's between Seattle 1 and Seattle 3, depending on the rest of my build. Seattle 1 mainly for ownership reasons. On the Vegas side, Jack Eichel didn't have really good numbers last year, but Jack Eichel also set a career high in even strength points per minute. The problem was that he didn't play a lot of minutes. Like he played a lot fewer minutes than he was when he was back in Buffalo, and the power play wasn't very good until Mark Stone returned in the playoffs. Mark Stone coming back helps Eichel a lot, even though they're not on the same even strength line. Stone added over 3 goals per 60 minutes on the power play for that team over the last 2 years when he was healthy. He is a difference maker with the power play. So they might not draw a lot of power plays, maybe only 2 or 3, but they were going to a heavily used top power play unit with Stone back, which means that top unit's going to get a lot of ice time. So Stone, Stevenson, Eichel, Marchessault, those guys are going to get a lot more power play minutes than they would otherwise. More power play minutes for Shea Theodore as well. I do like the Vegas top line here tonight. Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev. I think it's one of those lines where you can leave Barbashev off if you want, but I think he's kind of a good playmaker, like a disruptor on that line. So I might just leave him on and then look to add a defenseman, maybe rounded out a power play stack by adding Mark Stone or something like that. It's Vegas 1 that I really like on the Vegas side here. But I think their top 3, even their top 4 lines are all really in play. That Vegas 4th line might be the best 4th line in hockey, which sounds like faint praise. But if the Seattle goaltending is the same as it was last year, they don't need a ton of minutes to get a goal or two on the board. So I think of all the fourth lines on the slate here tonight, I like Vegas's the most.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you on Seattle with the Beniers line. I am considering them also. And you have to remember, Beniers was a rookie last year. You would expect him to take a step forward. How that affects tonight from a macro perspective, you can't quantify it, but like he should have a better season. So I do like them from that standpoint. It's just, you can't really X out anybody on a 3-game slate. I prefer the Vegas side by a lot, and it's also that Eichel line. I think you can leave Barbashev off and add in Stone if you want to get a little bit spicy on the power play. But again, like Seattle's penalty kill has been pretty good. It's just goaltending is the issue. So, there's question marks with almost every team on the slate tonight. You just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable on the slate.
I think the best DFS advice I ever got was that if you're playing GPPs mainly, like night in and night out, do not expect to get back your entries. You know what I mean? Like whatever you put in, expect to lose. And if you're fine with losing it, you can get kind of more different, more unique with your lineups. And I think that'll serve better in the long run.
Yeah. And if you're a single entry player, expect, weeks of boredom and moments of sheer terror.
Yeah, that too.
But yeah, let's before we get out of here, let's talk a little bit about some defensemen, goalies. Who are your favorite plays on the blue line tonight?
I got to say Roman Josi so I can keep my job. Yeah, Josi, obviously he leads the way on the blue line. With Erik Karlsson running the power play by himself now for Pittsburgh, I do like Erik Karlsson as well, obviously. Shea Theodore is the guy that I wrote up in the picks article, and it's mainly because of the power play. Like him getting more power play minutes is going to be the key to unlocking kind of like his next step, I think, in DFS value. And with them focusing all the minutes on the top power play unit and Shea Theodore running the top power play, like you said, Seattle does have a good penalty kill. They don't take a ton of penalties. I don't think there'll be a ton of power plays in this game. But I do like Shea Theodore amongst the expensive guys. For the cheap guys, it's Darren Radish from Tampa Bay. You mentioned him earlier. He played more minutes than Victor Hedman did in the playoffs last year. Hedman was injured, but he still played more than Nick Perbix. You know what I mean? Like he still played more than other guys that were incumbents, and that's how much they think of Radish. So I do like Radish for cheap. Ryan McDonough, I think, is kind of getting overlooked a little bit for block shots on DraftKings. And Korchinski from Chicago looks like he's going to carry quite a bit of ownership. I don't think it's terrible to play him. I don't want to play him at like 10% on a 3-game slate for his first, for the first game of the season. You know what I mean? That's what I'm kind of worried about. But Radish, Theodore, McDonough, Josi are kind of the guys that I'm focusing on the blue line. Who do you have?
Yeah, I like Kevin Korchinski. I just worry about his minutes. Like he is a prospect. Why play Kevin Korchinski at 10% when you can go down and get like Connor Murphy, who's going to play, around the same minutes, maybe more, and block some shots. You don't know, you're playing Kevin Korchinski on speculation, and maybe that's a good GPP play, speculating on a player and hope to get there. If you're looking for a little bit more safety, I think, like Murphy, well, Radish for sure, Murphy in that 2,800 range. Mid-range, there's not much. I do agree with Ryan McDonough there. Haas's boy Dante Fabro, I just have to contractually say that as well. But if I'm spending up, I think Yossi's the guy. I think Carlson's obviously a very good play if you want to, if you think the power play is going to get there. Shea Theodore again, like there's nothing like that I'm going to say that's going to be like, whoa, that's surprising. It's 3 games. You can't really you're not going to go down and get some guy who's going to play 9 minutes just because you need min salary. You can make it work tonight with 2,800.
Yeah, I'll just mention Alex Vlasic from Chicago as well. I was telling you in a chat earlier, I think there's at least a non-zero chance that he ends up with the second most minutes on the Chicago blue line. He was playing more minutes than Connor Murphy towards the end of the year last year. I would play Murphy more if I were the coach, but maybe they see something in Vlasic that we don't. So if you need like a stone min guy on DraftKings, I think he's the guy to use. Also just want to show, I just built a quick lineup here on DraftKings just to kind of show people kind of what we're talking about. So we have Pittsburgh 2, Vegas 1, Saros and McDonough for our goalie and defenseman, Ryan Graves stacking with Pittsburgh. So that's just a quick, what we would call a 3-3 stack for anybody that's new to DFS. So it's 3-3, or I guess this would be a 4-3 because we're adding the defenseman, but he's not the power play defenseman. It's just a guy because he fits salary wise. But yeah, that's just a quick 4-3 stack that you can whip up. Definitely not going to be the lineup that I use here tonight, but it's certainly one that is playable here on such a short slate.
Yep. Now let's talk about goalies here, because goalie seems like an interesting topic here tonight. Because I feel like the two chalkiest goalies, I did not look at goalie ownership, should have, but I would imagine if you're spending up, Yari's going to get the ownership. People love Yari. And then if you're spending down, it's going to be UC Saros. And then there's really not too much in between there. You got Peter Mrazek, 7K. I like Peter Mrazek in like 2016. I don't know about 2023 Peter Mrazek. Jonas Johansson, 8,100. Like, he's going to be super low owned, and that's what I'll say about that. Like, if he has a good game, like he's going to be very low owned. But again, like, goalie ownership to me doesn't matter. The points matter. And if you don't have the highest scoring goalie, it's going to be hard to win a GPP. So like the two I'm looking at are Yari and Saros. I guess you could play Aiden Hill, but like we mentioned, Seattle has shot volume concerns here. What other goalies are you looking at?
I'm playing one of the road goalies here tonight. Straight up, I honestly don't hate the idea of Jonas Johansson because like Tampa was not that great defensively last year. Like they were nowhere as close to one of the top teams by shots against. So he could actually see sneaky volume here tonight, I think. But you really have to kind of hold your nose to go play Jonas Johansson. But I mean, it's goaltending and it's one game, right? So kind of anything can happen. But it is going to be one of the road goalies on DraftKings. They're the 3 cheapest goalies. I think they're at least 2 of them are probably going to see the most volume here tonight. So it's probably going to be between Saros and Mrazek for me, but I am considering Grubauer as well. So I'm definitely going to be leaning to one of the road goalies. They are the 3 expected to be lower owned goalies. Whether that actually works out, we'll see.
Who you got for your hat trick pick?
I'm going with the guy named after goals themselves, Geno Malkin.
I'm going to go kind of off the board here, and that's just kind of what I've been doing for the past 2 seasons. I'm going Tommy Novak.
Oh, God. This is going to be a Tommy Novak season, and it's going to cost us so much money.
Better than Nashville won, chalky Nashville won last season.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Little man wants to say hello, or the bigger little man.
Oh. What's up, Adri?
Everybody, if you're new to this channel, stop what you're doing and subscribe, or else we will ban you from YouTube.
There you go. Make sure to smash that like button. Again, if you are still on the fence about joining Premium, links in the description get you 10% off weekly and monthly, get you access to the Discord, top stacks, projections. You can add on FC. We will have a lineups landing page soon. And, we'll be back tomorrow. Any last words for the people?
No, yes, actually, just one last word. I kind of hope that the Penguins beat the brains out of Chicago here tonight. I'm not convinced it's going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, let's get a 7-1 Pittsburgh victory with 6 goals from Radim Zahora. Is he on the team?
I don't think he's playing now that Gensel is, unfortunately, but you never know. Maybe Drew O'Connor's going to come through for us.
Yeah. Maybe, Drew O'Connor, min price, Corey Perry, min price on the power play. But we will be back tomorrow. We'll see you at 2 p.m. Eastern for a 6-game slate tomorrow. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Bye.
Good luck tonight, everyone.